All righty. Welcome everyone back from Labor Day. Um, Welcome to week 2 of our leadership training series. Um, Before we get started, Doug, anything you wanted to get with the group before we get going? And you'll probably have to come off mute.
Yes. I don't think so. I think last week's session went well and really looking forward now to digging into some of the specific tips and techniques and
Yeah.
things for being successful leaders. So just looking forward to it. Just encourage everybody that the participation was great last week and
Yeah.
encourage everybody to stay engaged and keep chiming in. It's great when everybody's involved.
Yes, yes. Awesome. Well, good. Thanks so much, Doug. Let me make sure we actually have a few people still jumping in. I'm giving it one more second. As Let's do some here really quick. Wow, we got a big crowd. That's awesome. Let me do this. Let me set that. All right. Yeah, big crowd, big crowd. Okay, so before we get going, a couple things just as a reminder first. If you don't mind, can you go ahead and open up your chat function? And then once you do that, just type in either I can hear you or something you did fun over Labor Day weekend. It was Labor Day weekend. Yes, Labor Day weekend. Boom. There we go. There we go. Good. Excellent. They can hear me. Awesome. So good. Reminder, because we have such a large, awesome group, two different ways to stay engaged and communicate. One is with the chat function. Actually, there's three. One is with the chat function, which we'll use regularly. Great, Jared. Me too. I actually had I had twin grandsons about 3 months ago. So we get to do that as well, see family. So one way to stay connected is through the chat function. So from time to time, I'll say, hey, if you want to put that in the chat function, that's great. That's the first way. The second way, obviously, anytime you want to come off mute, please do that. Know that when you do that, the only thing I'm really looking for is if you would just say, hey, this is Corey, or hey, this is Jared, just so I know who's talking. For some of us, I would agree, Nishis. I would totally agree. That was an interesting weekend. Yeah. Um, the other way is, remember last time, from time to time, I put you in small groups. We will do that again. I just try to do it in 2 or 3. That way everybody gets a chance to chat. What else? What else? What else? Hopefully, I know Doug forwarded you the participant guide for today. A lot of stuff I want to cover. If we don't get to all of it, we will roll it to the next section or the next time we meet, which I believe is next Thursday. I think that's the big stuff I wanted to hit. What else? What else? What else? Hopefully you printed that document so you can take notes on it. If not, totally cool. You can take notes on this side as well. But I think that's the big thing. I want to do one other thing before we get going, and that's this. I always try to connect from the previous week, and it feels like it was a long time ago, especially with Labor Day. But if you remember, last time we met, we got together and we talked about DISC, right? We spent about 2 hours on DISC, covered a lot of ground. Not sure. We didn't instruct you. I didn't have Doug instruct you. But if you got that handy, real quick review. I'm going to ask you to just flip through that disc. If you got it, if you don't panic. It's totally cool. But flip through that and pick out one cool thing that you remember about DISC. And once you find that, can you throw it in the chat function, come off mute, however you want to do it. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes first. Again, just flipping through DISC, if you've got it with you. What's one cool thing you like? And I'm looking for a page number and one cool thing. And you can either just put it in the chat, or if you want to, you can certainly come off mute. Know that we're all friends. Not about giving people a hard time. What you say is awesome. Anybody got anything cool? Anything you want to share? Anything you got, either through chat or through coming off mute. Anything you liked. No.
Hey, this is Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer.
Hey, unfortunately I'm in my car. I don't have my packet with me, but
So please don't
um,
be flipping pages.
actually, I actually use this method kind of. I had an instance where I had somebody offer to help me, and being a DC, I'm and jump to the fact of, no, I got it. I don't need your help. I'm good. Instead, I like took a step back and like asked questions before I automatically said no, and then I did end up saying no, but I actually used facts of why I didn't want their
Yeah.
help instead of just automatically going no because you're going to mess it up and I don't want you to, you know. So it made me stop and evaluate it instead of just automatically jumping to my normal reaction.
That's awesome. Thank you. And please try safe. Great point. Others that I'm seeing, some of you just put in your style, learning about your style. One of the things I love about DISC is it starts with your style. You get a sense of your picture and who you are, and then it goes from there. The other big thing, Corey mentions it, Evan mentions it, is those pages 12 through 15. How can I think about another person that has either my style or a different style? And how do I share that? Good stuff. What else am I seeing? So, Anne Marie, you talked about your DC style, how to deal with that. Danielle, page 6, the stressors. On page 6, there, if you remember, at the top is motivators, right? And at the bottom is stressors. Great thing to think about. One of the key takeaways for me with the stressors is doesn't mean we can't do it. It just may take us a little more energy, right? Than we expect. Okay, good. Page 12, how to connect with a D. Man, thanks so much. A lot of good stuff here. I see several things around those pages 12 through 15. Great stuff. One other page I'm going to emphasize with you, really two, because it's all about you when it starts. Don't forget about page 3. Get to the being, I call it brilliant at the basics. Page 3 is your dot location, so it gives you your style. And then remember, the closest you are to the middle, if you're close to the middle, then that preference is slight. If it's in the middle, it's solid. If it's pushing the outer reaches of the circle, it's a strong style for you. So that's page 3. And then the other, of course, is page 4. I think page 4 is really, really, really underrated. I call that the boring coming to grips with who you are. Gives you a picture of your soul, I think was where I was trying to go. So that's a really good picture of who you are. Excellent, excellent, good. Just wanted to share that with you. Please, 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 as was mentioned earlier, think about this both for yourself and then for others. Okay. All right. So with that, that was really where we went with DISC last week. This week, in the second half, I want to spend a little bit of time from talking about communication. And I kind of frankly, overstuffed this section. So if we don't get it all done in 2 hours, we'll put it in another section because I think communication is huge, right? So I'm talking about communication when you communicate with other folks that report to you, peers, even your boss. So I'm going to start with this because we just need to be engaged. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms let's go with, let's see what we get to. Can I get to pairs? Ooh, I get to 2 or 3. I'm going to put you in the group. Remember, it prompts you. I'm going to do it quick. But
Hey,
the
Scott.
question, yes.
Yeah, so you could drop me out if you'd like to do that, if that'll help out and pair up.
Oh, okay, let me see. I'm not sure if I can. I'll try. Yeah,
Okay.
totally cool. What is the hardest thing for all of you when it comes to communication at work, not at home? Home's a different class. Okay. So I created the groups, and I'm going to go from there. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. So the question was toughest thing for you when it comes to communicating at work. If you wouldn't mind, just a couple of you throw in the chat function or come off mute. Toughest thing for you when it comes to communicating at work. What makes that difficult? Anybody willing to share? Love to, again, you can throw it in chat, come off mute. What jumps out at you?
So this is Brittany, and I think
Hey, Brittany.
I think it was pretty on par for everybody that was in our group, but it's the amount of follow-up that we have to do.
Interesting.
Recommunicating the communication that we've already communicated and then following back.
You communicated, then you communicate, and then you totally understand. Totally makes sense. Thanks so much. Great. Anybody else? Good example. Anybody else? Toughest thing about communicating at work?
I think for our group, it was communicating in a way that we don't step on anybody's toes or hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one of the challenges that I found, and I don't know if I mentioned this last time, my last corporate job, I had 6 folks that reported to me. And one of the challenges I constantly had was, you know, you have that tough conversation or you deliver a message that's not received super well. And how is that going to go for the next day or 2 days? You know, are you going to be walking on eggshells? Those sorts of things. So yeah, that's a great point. Assumptions, assuming certain things, and we certainly do not want to assume, to Roberta's point. Excellent. Anybody else? Give me one more challenge when it comes to communication. Ooh, passing along details, describing important concepts fully without losing the audience, having them get bored. That's my life as a trainer. How do I, but how do I keep them engaged? How do I make sure that they're picking up what I'm putting down, as I like to say sometimes? Excellent. Well, hopefully, as we go through, communication is a huge section. And we hit this first because I think that's a great starting point. But now let's get into communication itself. So hopefully you've got the participant guide in front of you. Just, can somebody tell me this? I believe the bottom of the first page says 2-1. Is that correct? Or it either says 1 or 2-1. Can somebody tell me which one it says? I just want to make sure I'm good.
2-1 is correct.
Boom. Awesome. Excellent. So if you would look at the bottom of that page, there are objectives for the material we want to cut from a communication standpoint. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. On that page, star anything on there that you think might be interesting, that could be helpful to you. And stars are free. Anything on 2-1 that you think might be interesting. Stars are free. Okay.
I would say develop
Oh.
essential communication skills for a strong leader.
Excellent. Good. Who is that?
I'm sorry, this is Gerard.
No worries. No worries, Gerard. Thanks so much. Good. Anybody else? Challenge or what's one that you start? Thanks, Jared or Gerard. Sorry.
This is Nisha, and I would agree, definitely develop essential communication skills for a strong leader.
Excellent. Good. Anybody else?
This is Jennifer.
Hey,
I
Jennifer.
would say apply strategies for working more productively on teams.
Excellent. Good. Good. I'm looking for one more, and then I promise we'll keep moving. Anybody else?
Anthony,
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you very well.
this is Anthony at Container Supply.
Okay, sounds good. Still having a tough time, but totally cool. Awesome. So those are some of the big things I want to hit. I'm going to go past 2-2. On 2-3, I'm trusting that you have something that looks like this. Yes, can somebody type in the chat? Yep, that's 2-3. Boom. Okay, perfect. So if you look at this picture, let me navigate it for you. This is your life, hopefully. The middle is a work cute environment. What are some things you're responsible for? What you'll also notice is there's a dashed line, and to the left, it's climate. So climate of work. And then to the right, it's performance management. How do I manage the performance of folks? Okay. Now, once you look at that, you also have 8 boxes, black boxes. And so these are 8 boxes that typically leaders are responsible for. And I'm going to start at 12 o'clock. So you just follow along with me. I'm not going to read all of them. Performance expectations, standards, and goals are there. Training and coaching's there. Recognition, reward, and accountabilities at 6 o'clock, right? Quality of work group communications at 9 o'clock. But you have 8 of them. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. On a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to look at each of the 8 boxes and give me a number, put a number next to it on a scale of 1 to 10. How important is communication? So here's what I'm saying. When you you look at training and coaching, how important is communication? If it's super important, it's a 10. If it's not a big deal, put a 1. And you can go anywhere between 1 and 10. You're not ranking them. You're actually grading each one 1 to 10. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that on your own first. And then we'll come back and talk about it. Okay, everybody good? Ooh, I've got a little bit of a background, but that's okay. Good. Okay. Yep. So again, just go around that. And on a scale of 1 to 10, all 8 of the boxes, how important is communication? 10 is, my gosh, Scott, that's hugely important. 1 is, doesn't really matter. It's not a huge deal. Okay. Give you a few minutes. It's got a big crowd. Thanks everybody for showing up on a day after Labor Day. Okay. Okay. Awesome. I'm trusting that you're in a pretty good spot. Scale of 1 to 10, you went around the boxes. Step 1, if in the chat function, I'm going to ask you to do this. What's your top 1? If you have 2 10s, what's your top one of the 2? So when I'm just typing in the chat function, and you can put it to one word and I'll understand. So for example, if you feel like management style and skills is the communication is most important to that one, you're just going to type in management. If you think it's training and coaching, you just type in training. Which one of the 8 boxes is communication the most important? What do you think? Ooh, excellent. So I'm seeing training and coaching, objective feedback, goals, expectations, performance expectations. Seeing a little bit, keep going. The right side, I saw that. Excellent, interesting training. Okay, quality of work group, performance expectations. Interesting. You know, Jared's all 10s. Jared, I'm sorry, I think I'm mispronouncing. I apologize. Quality of work group. Here's what I'm noticing, and you may be noticing as you look at this. You know, it varies. Several of you are thinking of different things. They're all important in their own way, and communication is huge with them. Next question. Is there one that you put a 5 or below on? And I promise we're not going to, just curious. So I'm assuming everything below Ronald that put all is going to be something you put below. I'm working the chat function. Anybody have something that you put a 5 or below on a box? Management style, potentially. Okay. Thanks, Vivian. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Employee input and involvement. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, Jennifer. just curious. I think the biggest takeaway I want you to think about with this page is the fact that when it comes to your work unit, these are 8 boxes alone. Potentially, Corey, I think that's a fair point. You may not measure, you may not communicate that quite as much, although it kind of depends on the time of the year. The takeaway is you've got all these different boxes where communication can really, really matter. And depending on what's going on with your work group, it's when you might want to think about a little bit more. So that's on 2-3. Just wanted to kind of get your take. This is not in the book. The next thing up, I have a case study in front of you. Okay. I'm going to read this to you. And then once I do that, I am going to put you in different groups in a minute. But I want you to think about this. I want you to imagine that Mitchell works for you. Mitchell's working on a project you thought would require about 8 hours to complete. Mitchell's put in 6 hours and he's nowhere near finished. Okay. And then at the bottom, it says, how can you get the project done quickly without undermining his confidence or self-esteem? Second, what will you do or say to Mitchell? I'm actually going to ask you to do this for me when I put you in groups. Question number 1 is, what's the first question you ask Mitchell? That's the first question. What's the first question you ask Mitchell? And then the second question really is the first bullet. How can you get the project done quickly without undermining his confidence or self-esteem? So with that in mind, again, I'm going to put you in groups of 2 or 3. I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about this. Think about those 2. What's the first question you ask Mitchell? Number 1. Number 2, what are some options? What can you do to get the project done without breaking Mitchell's heart? I'm actually going to put you in the same groups you were just in. I'll give you 5 or 6 minutes and we'll come back. Thanks, everybody. All righty, giving it us. All right, welcome back, everybody. Again, the assignment was you've got the case study. Mitchell's working on a project you thought would require about 8 hours to complete. He's put in 6 hours, nowhere near finished. First question. What's the first question you would ask Mitchell? Anybody willing to come off mute, or you can put it in chat. If Mitchell actually reported to you, so you're going to go meet with Mitchell, what's the first question you might ask Mitchell? Anybody willing to share?
Maybe check in with Mitchell. This is Roberta. Maybe check
Hey,
in with
Roberta.
Mitchell and see how he feels about his progress.
Okay, excellent. And I apologize. There's not a place on here. So maybe on the bottom of 2-3, even on the bottom of 2-2, if you want to write some of these down. So the first question to your point is, could be just coming up with ideas. How does Mitchell, how do you think things are going so far? That's a great one. Anybody else? Anybody else come up with a good question? What do you think?
This is Nisha, and for
Hey,
us, we
Nisha.
just felt like it would be important to understand if Mitchell felt like he had enough time to complete it. If some things came up that were like roadblocks for him that did not allow him to complete it in the 8 hours that we thought he could complete it in.
Thank you so much, Nisha. Let's write both of those down. Do you have enough time? And I'm sorry, what was the other one? Brain cramp. What was the other one you said?
Just understanding from him if the job was or the project was actually bigger than 8 hours and required more resources.
That's what it was. Time and resources. Do you have enough time? Is it going to take more resources? Great. Thank you. Anybody else?
One of the things that Ronald mentioned in our breakout was he said, ask them how it's going, which in my opinion would be a disarming way of hearing, what the cause is for the delay. And then you can, hear what they say and offer additional resources. go from there.
A great point. What's going on? How's it going? Yeah. Anybody else? You know, one thing and I agree with all you. I think one of the things that hits me, sometimes if Mitchell was reporting to me, I might start with a statement like, it looks like you might be struggling, or it looks like you're not quite as far as maybe you had hoped, something like that. And then the follow-up would be one of the questions you mentioned. I love, what am I missing? How are things going? Mitchell, what's your take? And then I wait. And based on their response, it might, it sounds like maybe it's taking longer than you expected. It sounds like it might be might involve more resources than expected. So again, I start with a statement and then a question, because I'd love to get a take from Mitchell in terms of what he's thinking. So statement, how are things going? What am I missing? Something like that is a great starting point. Okay. Second question. How can you get the project done quickly without crushing Mitchell's very soul? Anybody come up with some ideas? What are your, I guess to me that next question is, what are your options? What could you do as a leader here? And again, if you want to throw it in chat, you want to come off mute, options you've
Okay,
got.
I'll go first.
Yes.
This is Gerard.
Hey,
First,
Gerard.
I would commend him on his progress while also reminding him of the deadline. Um, and then at that point, suggest a small team to get the goal accomplished.
Get a couple of those down. Once, to your point, reminding about the deadline, that the deadline's going to happen. The other option you mentioned was, perhaps we put a small team together, or if nothing else, a contact person, a resource for Mitchell to help Mitchell out. Great. Anybody else? Any other options you had? Remind him of the deadline, provide him some human resources, some people resources, anything else. One thing to think about from my perspective is, if there's any tools, if there's any actual resource, ask Mitchell about that and get that to Mitchell. Yep. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is Brittany. I
Hey,
was
Brittany.
gonna have him just walk, side by side with him
Ooh.
on what he's doing. So hopefully he's got all of the skill sets that he's needing. If he's missing anything, then maybe we could provide some tips on, increasing his productivity.
Great idea. Walk him. I would definitely jot that one down as well. Walk him through the process. Walk me through your thought process. And what's nice about that is you get a sense of where Mitchell's going, but you can also say, well, that's not really relevant here, or, let's adjust the process. Great. Anybody else? Third question. I didn't ask you to think about this. Under what circumstance would you pull the project from Mitchell completely? Or would you? At what point would you pull you'd say, Mitchell, I'm going to give it to Corey. I'm going to give it to Daniel. I'm going to give it to somebody else. Under what circumstance would you do that, or would you do that? What do you think? And again, if you want to throw it in chat, come off mute. What do you think?
I would pull the project from Mitchell if he gave me any type of inkling that he was not going to be able to get it done. If at the 6th hour and he tells me I'm struggling, I would definitely pull it from him at that point. And I would, speak with him and let him know why. I would ask him, do you feel like you're going to have it done? Or do you feel like you're not going to have it done?
Okay, fair enough. And Anne Marie, you've got, if he's struggling and really doesn't understand, totally fair. The only thing and I totally understand, the only other thing that I wonder if it's possible, could I say that I'm handing it to someone else? But I do want you to walk through the process with this person so that next time you feel a little bit better about it, if that's possible. Sean, that's a great point too. If he knowing that it's a failure is not focused on the timeline, and then I may have to have a completely different conversation, because if he's knowingly dropping the ball, I've still got to get it done. But I've got to figure out how to handle that, which is something we'll talk more about in coaching and conflict and those sorts of things. Great stuff. Great stuff. Thanks, Sean. Anybody else? You know, I just bring this up because it's a typical situation, isn't it? You give something to someone, you think they've got it, you check in. You know, one other thing I would have you add on this page is if I still give it to Mitchell, I may want to increase the regularity of checking in with him. I mean, if it really was an 8-hour item and I've only checked for the first time at 6, I might say to Mitchell, okay, now we're in a good place for these last 2. I may check in a little bit more regularly. I just want to make sure that you're successful and we get it done, right? Does that make sense? So anyway, just a kind of an interesting, cool case study, just something to think about. Okay.
Scott,
All right.
Scott,
Yes.
Scott, here, Ronald. I'm a little bit confused by this question, because from my point of view is if he's not capable at it on this job, then you as team leader are also not how do you say it, qualified enough, because then you made a mistake putting not the right person on the job.
Yeah, that's really true. I think
then you have
that's
to be supportive in front, or you has to be something like that. If they're not capable, then you didn't have to put it on the job. So that's
yeah.
You understand what I mean?
Absolutely.
Then it's the leader or the manager also involved. You cannot
Absolutely.
blame him.
Yeah,
Totally.
if it's a situation, that's a fair point. If it's a situation where they weren't trained, I mean, obviously that's on us. And that's why we really want to ask good questions up front to find out what's really going on. I mean, for all we know, if we ask a really good question, it could be that Mitchell looks at us and says, another leader came to me with another project, and then I've got to address that. So we've really got to figure out what's going on depending on the scenario. And it could be several different scenarios, right? All right, so that was, I had you put down some stuff on the bottom of page 2.2, correct? And then we had already done 2.3. I'm going to have you next, if you would, go to page 2.4. On 2.4, you should have something that looks like this, I trust. At the top, it says a communication model, and then you've got this picture, and then you've got 3 questions at the bottom, okay? The 3 questions are: what can go wrong? Describe different types of noise, traits of an effective communicator you know. So I'm going to start with the picture. It comes across a little bit complex, but I want you to imagine that Kyle and I are communicating, okay? So Kyle is on the left and I'm on the right. And so Kyle communicates. He sends a message to me. It comes to me. You notice in the box it says, you know, I encode, I decode the message. I turn around and I send a response to Kyle, and we're talking back and forth. Okay. I'm trying to read not only his verbals, but also his nonverbals as I go through this conversation. Okay. Now, you may notice on 2.4, between the 2, you see these bold and capitalized words, noise, okay? To me, my definition of noise is anything that gets in the way of Kyle and I communicating, things that can get in the way, okay? Does that make sense? So I want you to think about this, and I'm going to have you throw these initially in the chat function for me, if you don't mind. What are some examples of noise? Think about myself and Kyle. What could get in the way? So let me give you an example. One might be, and I put in this: someone interrupts us. So that's one. So you can put this either under what can go wrong or under describe different types of noise. I'm kind of putting those two together. What else, what other noise, what else could get in the way of us, of Kyle and I communicating? Throw that in the chat if you don't mind. Okay, good. Not good, but jot some of these down. What do we got? Telephone call. Facial expressions. My nonverbal shows that I would rather do anything than talk to Kyle. Sorry, Kyle. The tone I use when I'm talking to Kyle, or vice versa. One of the two of us are having a bad day. Good, not good, but let's get a few of these down. Competing priorities. I'm focused on what's next. I had a boss that was famous for doing one-on-ones in his office by looking at his laptop, which faced the wall, and he would look over his shoulder and he'd say, hey, I can multitask. I have things going, I can do that. He couldn't. And we finally had to tell him that he couldn't. Competing priorities, emotions. Wow, great stuff. Thank you. Emotions, current relationship, phone call, the messages being man, a lot of stuff. Discussion gets interrupted, visitor, eye contact, unrelated stress. Sometimes it's things that people bring from home to work. Jared put emergency. Good stuff. Anything else? What else could get in the way? You know, the only other thing that I can think of beyond what you've already got might be Kyle and I haven't always gotten along in the past, and there's some sort of a history. And it's certainly easy to say, well, that would not play into it, but sometimes it does. Okay. So these are things that can get in the way. Man, you had so many great things, but just ideas. Interruptions, phone calls, nonverbals, priorities, emotions. What else do I have? Somebody jumps in, a visitor, a customer was not mentioned. There's an emergency, poor delivery. Just if you would, under one or both of those first questions on 2-4, I'm just going to ask you to get a few of those down, if you don't mind. Okay. Give you a couple minutes to do that. Okay. And then once you do that, can you star one or two of those that you say to yourself, you know, sometimes it gets in my way. Sometimes those, I mean, it's different in every situation, but any of those that as you really think about it, you've got to watch other people, you know, so you may star interruptions, or you may star and really look at it from your perspective, I think, more than their perspective, knowing that other people bring things to the table too. But put a star next to one or two of those on 2-4 that really jump out at you. Okay. And then once you do that, can you do me a favor? Can somebody come off mute and just say, hey, listen, I got to admit, sometimes that's a challenge. Anybody willing to share? And again, if you wouldn't mind, just say, hey, this is Kristen or whoever it is. What's one that you got to watch?
This is Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer.
I would definitely say tone and facial expressions.
Okay. Okay. Why do you say those two, if you don't mind me asking? Sorry.
I do not have a poker face. If I'm annoyed and I don't want to deal with something, or I don't agree with you, it's clear on my face.
You know, it's so funny. I thought I was going to say, are you saying that you don't have a good poker face? And that's sometimes we can just read people. Absolutely true. Yeah, excellent. Anybody else? Thanks, Jennifer. Good. Thanks again for all of your participation. Anybody else? What's one that you got to watch?
This is Nisha. I have to watch my
Hey,
tone.
Nisha, have to watch your tone.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody else? Okay. I think the big takeaway I want you to think about when it comes to those first two are what are things that can get in the way of you being understood, but also sometimes thinking about some other folks that maybe report to you or peers. One that I wrestle with, and I don't know if you've wrestled with it, but I had a few folks that they just brought home to work a lot. And I had to make some tough choices about, I knew I was in trouble when they would say, "Hey, do you mind if I vent for a little while?" And I thought this could be longer than a while. I've had leaders that have said, at some point, "Hey, listen, really we've got things we need to get done. I don't want to take up too much more of your time." Just trying to figure out that line, right? Okay. And then the bottom of page 2.4, say the two questions, and then the bottom of page 2.4 is traits of an effective communicator. I want you to think about, again, this is not home, this is at work. Think about folks that you work with that are great communicators. What's a trait that they have that you say to yourself, "Man, that's really good"? If you don't mind throwing that in chat, what's one trait of effective communication that you've seen in someone? I'm throwing one out: nodding. Clear. Ooh, bullets, clear and precise. Patience. Vivian's got showing consideration. Again, you may want to get a few of these down the bottom of 2.4. Being a good listener, which we're going to talk about. Anne Marie's got being patient, not only listening, but hearing, otherwise known as you want to listen to hear, not listen to answer, right? Take your time, listen, as opposed to if they would just stop talking, then I would jump in and solve all world problems. Good. What else did I have? Calm, Kristen, that's a good one. I had a boss that was famous for taking a lap around the parking lot so that he could calm down. Yeah. Ability to explain things differently if it's not understood the first time. That's a great one, Evan. Collaborative, engaging. A lot of good stuff. What else do I have? Somebody else asking good question. Thanks, Ronald. Good, good. Patient and listening. I'm going to ask you, thanks so much. Great stuff. If you would put these on the bottom of 2.4, wow. So again, sorry guys. What have we got? What have we got? We've got things to put down, nodding, concise, being patient, being considerate. I'm just rolling through the chat function. We talked about listening. We already had patient, calm, having eye contact. Good, good, good. Explain things differently. Being collaborative. That's a great one. Calm, good facial expressions, positive, cheerful, being empathetic. There's good. Again, I just want you to get a few of these down on 2.4. Okay. And again, being tolerant, Nisha, good one. Being tolerant, not understanding, accepting other viewpoints. Yeah. Caring. Good, good. Again, make sure if you would that you get a few of these down on 2.4. And then once you do that, and I'm not going to particularly ask you to share these, but maybe circle a few that you say to let's play it this way. Star a couple that you do well under effective communication. Okay. And then maybe circle one that you say to yourself, Man, I need to work on that. I need to get better at that. Okay, so you jotted a few down, the bottom of 2.4. Jotted a few of them down, bottom of 2.4 under effective communicator. Okay. And then once you do that, star a couple that you do well. And then circle one that you say to yourself, gotta work on that. Gotta work on that. Okay. If you don't mind, let's at least play this. In the chat function, what's one that you do well? What's one that you say to yourself, you know what? I do that. I do that. I'm pretty good at that. There's nothing wrong with bragging if it's true, right? What's one that you say to yourself, Jennifer, active listening, patience, listening, good, good. Good. Empathy. I'm seeing a lot of empathy and listening. Okay. Calm and positive, Ronald. Good. Planning for potential. Oh, that's a good one. Listening, eye contact, active listening, patience. Okay. A lot of listening, a lot of patience. Good. All right. So that's 2-4. Okay. Just want to make sure everybody's good. If you look on the next possible page 2-5, this is really just the transition page. I want to get into some key pieces around communication. As you look at this picture, we're going to talk a little bit about word power. We're going to talk about voice strength, which is at 3, being supportive, Nisha. Yeah, that's a good one. Talk about word power, talk about voice strength, physical presence, which is nonverbals, and then finally talk a little bit about active listening. I want to spend some time on those 4. Okay. Let's start with word power. So if you go to page 2-6, page 2-6, we're going to start with word power. Okay. So if you look at this, I'm moving from the top to the bottom on 2-6. At the top on word power, I'm kind of focusing on the bold. The first big one is using positive language, and it gives you a couple of examples there. But then it also says avoid negative things. I'm going to ask you to take a couple of minutes and think about that one. What are some things that you need to be careful of not saying that can be negative? Let me give you a couple examples, couple that jump out at me. One is saying always, you always do this, you never do that. That's a couple that I would put under negative. But any other negative things that that you really want to avoid saying when it comes to using your words with folks that report to you, with peers, stuff like that? What else jumps out at you? If you want to throw it in chat, that'd be awesome. I think being careful as you're thinking, I think about any labeling. I had a boss one time that he was telling folks that they weren't strategic, and folks started to believe that they just couldn't be strategic and needed to take a step back from that. Oh, good. Nisha comparing. You're not like that person. It's a great point. Good. Having to pay attention, mentioning that. Anybody else? Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I think those are a couple that really jump out of me. Always, never, labeling someone, comparing others. and of course, anyway, demeaning or disrespectful, non-constructive criticism. That's a great one too. Thank you. Good, good. Okay. Okay. At the bottom of the page, it talks about being, it talks about being brief and efficient. And there are two examples at the bottom of that page. I'm going to do this. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds, or I'm sorry, a couple of minutes. And I'm just going to ask you to take those two statements and make them as short as you can and still get the point across. And we're going to do this individually because I'm going to push in groups here pretty shortly. But just take those two statements on the bottom of 2.6 and simplify them. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes. I'll be right back. Thanks, everybody. All righty. So the challenge, bottom of 2.6, you had two different statements, two different sentences. If you were going to make those as short as possible, and I'm going to have you come off mute. Anybody got for the first one, that number one, it says it's expected the new schedule will be announced by the company's president within the next few days. Anybody come up with a really good short statement for that one without losing the meaning? Anybody come up with anything good?
I'll do that. This is Anthony McKinney in Atlanta.
Anthony, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
So I wrote, our company's president will announce a tentative schedule within a week.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Anthony, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Good to have you. Anybody else? Anybody else have a different version? Anthony's was great. Anybody else got one? For number one?
Scott, you wanted it short, right? You wanted it short and sweet.
Yes.
Okay, I don't think we can, my version would be, we should have the new schedule soon.
Perfect. Perfect. Short, sweet, to the point. Short, sweet, to the point. Let's go to number two. Again, we're shortening it. And that one, for some reason, number two confuses me a little bit. Trouble is caused when people disobey rules that have been established for the safety of all. How would you shorten and clarify that one? Anybody have an idea? If you don't mind coming off mute.
This is Gerard again in Atlanta.
Hey, Gerard.
Safety is very important.
Okay. Safety is very important. There you go. Good. Anybody else?
This is Lynn. I said
Hey,
rules
Lynn.
are established for the safety of all.
Rules are established for the safety of all. I like that. I think the takeaway for those things on the bottom of 2.6, and it almost starts feeling like an email, perhaps. Short, sweet, to the point. Bullets. I think that's true with emails, but I also think that's true with comments. It's funny. So I can't remember, one of you said up front, when I have to follow up, and sometimes I find that keeping things short and then I repeat it the same way, but I keep it short, sweet, to the point, really, really matters. Okay. So that's the bottom at 2.6. Go to 2.7. On 2.7, at the top, you've got some fuzzy words. Okay. Can somebody just type in yes that you're seeing the fuzzy words at the top of 2.7? Oh, okay, so I love this activity. So what fuzzy words are, these are words that we use, but it means a lot of things to different people. Okay, so you see often, always, sometimes, all these different words. I'm going to start with always. I want you to suppose that a new hire started with you. And for example, they said, how often are we off for Christmas? Hypothetically, keeping it simple. And you say always. Does always mean 100% of the time it's going to happen, 90% of the time it's going to happen? I'm not just using the Christmas example. I'm just giving that as an example. If you use the word always when you're sharing something with somebody that reports to you, does always mean 100%, or is it somewhat less? Is there a little bit of wiggle room? Does that make sense? Look at never. I say to one of you, how often is there overtime? And you say never. Does never mean 0%, like never, ever, ever? Or is never, it could never be, well, 5% of the time. Okay. I'm going to ask you to take each of the words, both sides. So you've got a list of, on the left, list to the right. When you say that word at work, what's the percent that it's going to happen? If you say always, is it 100? If it's usually, is that means 60% of the time it's going to happen? Okay. I'm going to give you a couple minutes. Just do the top. Just do the top. Just do the top. Just doing fuzzy. I'll give you a couple minutes and we'll come back. Thanks, everybody. So, had you again, look at those fuzzy words. And for each word, if you say that word, what's the percentage it's going to happen? Always, if it's 100, if it's 90. I'm not going to do all of them, I promise. First one, I'm starting with always. If you say always, what's the percent it's going to happen? If you throw it in the chat, what's the percent? Ooh, Sean's interesting. 95. I'm seeing 95 to 100. So funny. I had a group of engineers one time and I said, what's always? And he said 100 and somebody said like 93. And he said, always means always. And we got in this whole conversation about it just depends, right? Okay, perfect. First one. So everybody's at 95 to 100. Second one. Give me your number for usually. Give me your number for usually. Ooh. Oh, wow. I'm seeing 80 to 75 to 90. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Look at that. 70. I see. I got a 95 out of Chris. Interesting. Okay. Okay. 95. All right. Interesting. There's a range. I'm seeing a range from 75 to 95. What's your hang on a minute. We had a few more. A lot of 80s. What's your occasionally number? Bottom of the left-hand column. What's your occasionally number? 50. Ooh, I see. Isn't that interesting? 50 to 15. Wow. Everybody's 10. Wow. Okay. 5. Interesting. We've got all the way from 5 to 60 on occasionally. Okay. I'm going to do one more. Last one, I promise. Second one on the right. A lot. A lot. Huh. Wow. Once again, I see 60 to, thanks again for 60 to 90. Wow. Interesting. Ronald's got 90. 65. So here's my takeaway from that. And you may want to just write it above the words. If you use one of these words, make sure you explain what you mean, is basically what we're talking. These are words we use all the time as leaders. But what they mean to us and they mean to someone else could be completely different things. And so if you're using these words, again, under the 2 columns, so right above where it says don't be judgmental, you may want to write, when I use one of these words, I need to explain what it means or explain the percentage. You know, when I say always, I mean always. When I say always, I mean there could be occasional difference because again, the opposite to me of fuzzy is clear. And so I want to be clear. I want people to understand exactly where I'm coming from. Okay. So that's the top. Okay. In the middle, it says, don't be judgmental. And then you've got a T chart, right? And the top of the left T chart, it says judgmental. Top of the right, it says non-judgmental. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. On the top where it says judgmental, can you cross through that and put the word general? And then on the right where it says non-judgmental, can you put specific? Top left heading is general. Top right is specific. Okay. And then once you do that, then below on the left side, below general, can you write this word for me? Attitude. Attitude. Attitude is a general word that we share with folks who report to us all the time, right? Attitude. You've got a great attitude. You've got a terrible attitude. Could be great, could be terrible. And either verbally or non-verbally, when we share that word, the folks that we're sharing that with will say to us, what do you mean by that? Okay. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to put you back in your groups. Where do our groups go? Same groups. And I'm going to give you either good attitude or bad attitude. Doesn't matter. So if your group has good attitude, I want you to imagine you say, wow, Scott, you've got a good attitude. You've got a great attitude. And I say, well, what do you mean by that? What could that specifically be? And you're going to put that to the right of the T chart. Okay. If you're the person if you're the group that's got bad attitude, imagine you say, gosh, Scott, you've got a terrible attitude. And I say, what do you mean by that? What could that be? Good attitude could be, an example might be, I'm a team player. I jump in and help. Bad attitude could be, I'm a gossip. I'm a gossip. I'm looking for 3 or 4 things, and then we'll come back. So, room 1, which is the Anne Marie, Evan, Jennifer, Sean group, can you do good? The Brittany and other group, can you do bad? Danielle, Jared, Leah, can you do good? Kyle, bad. Roberta, good. Room 6 is the Corey group, bad. Carlos, good. Elizabeth, bad. And then I'm going to throw Jay. I'm going to put you in group 8 if that's okay. Okay, everybody good? I'm going to give me 3 or 4 specifics, and then we'll come back and see what you came up with. Okay, I am sending you off. Thanks, everybody. All righty, so welcome back, everyone. So again, the assignment was we're on 2-7 in the middle. To the left under in the T chart under general, I had you write the word attitude, and then depending on which group you're in, I had you put on the right examples, or under general, you put attitude on the right. It's either examples of good or great attitude or specific examples of poor. I want to start with the good stuff. Anybody willing to come off mute? If you were in one of the rooms that did good, what'd you come up with? If you don't mind coming off chat, that would be awesome.
It's, Gerard.
Hey, Gerard.
A couple that came up in our group were body language, but I guess that could go in either one.
Yeah.
Enthusiastic, smile, and motivated.
Okay, good. Good body language, smile. What was the last one again, Gerard?
Motivated.
Motivated. Good examples. Anybody else on the good side? Examples of good attitude. Anybody else come up with anything?
Hi, it's Carlos over here. In our team, we picked positive, outgoing, and team player.
Nice. Positive. So let's get those down. Positive, outgoing, team player. Good. Anybody else have good stuff?
Yeah, this is Roberta.
Hey, Roberta.
We thought they always viewed something as an opportunity, not a task. Was one of the ones that we thought. And also, Ronald said proactive, being proactive.
Nice. Opportunity and proactive. Those are great.
Yeah.
I love those. Excellent. Thank you. So those are examples of positive or good attitude specific. What about those of you that had negative attitude? What were some specific examples you came up with? Anybody willing to share?
Yeah, this is Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
We had, the nonverbals. Sometimes you talk to people trying to have them do something, and you can tell right away they're already pissed off before you've even told them what to do.
Yeah.
Also, people who procrastinate or maybe they just don't care at all. Some people don't really care to get ahead, and they just want to go through their day to day with avoiding everybody for the most part.
Yeah. So bad nonverbals, procrastination, don't care, lack of effort, not engaged.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Anybody else? Thank you. Thanks, Kyle. Anybody else on the negative side?
Yes, for our group, this is Brittany. For our
Hey.
group, we had sloppy work, bad morale, work ethic, and then body language.
Good. Sloppy work, bad morale, bad body language. Yeah. Good. Here's the reason I had you do this. Somewhere down the road, as we continue with this series of webcasts, we'll do coaching. And one of the things we talk a lot about when it comes to coaching is we need to be specific, both positively and negatively when it comes to what's going on. We'll talk about skills, behaviors, results, and under behaviors, it's not enough to say you've got a great attitude or you've got a terrible attitude. What does that really look like? And so that's why, when I look under that second one, being as specific and clear as you can is really, really important. And that's kind of why I had you do that activity. We did a little bit differently than the judgmental, non-judgmental, kind of focused on being general to specific. So that's the middle of 2.7. On the bottom of 2.7, it says 3 ways to get people to do what they say they will do. Let me give those to you. The first one is to set a deadline, give them a due date. That's number 1, if you want to fill that in. Number 2 is to get it in writing. Number 1's to set a deadline. Number 2 is to get it in writing. And then number 3 is to follow up all the way through. Okay, let me give those to you again. Bottom of 2.7. 1 is set a deadline. 2 is to get it in writing. And 3 is to follow up all the way through. And what I mean by that is sometimes, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've done this, where I follow up early on through a process with someone, and then at some point I forget to follow up or I get busy. And then I think it's going to get done and it doesn't get done. Okay, so that's my 3. If you were going to add a 4th to the bottom of 2.7, what would you add? What would you add? And you can put it on the chat or you can come off mute. If you were going to add a 4th way to get
this. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
This is Gerard in Atlanta again. I guess I would, hearing them, I would repeat what they said that they were going to do just to confirm.
Yes, that's great. Let's put that underneath number 3. Repeat and confirm. Great. Good. Thanks so much, Gerard. Excellent. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? That's a great one. Use care to motivate, give them a short, get them interested. I think if nothing else, maybe just thinking about ways to motivate. Maybe we go with that. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, good stuff. So that's 2.7. If you would go from 2.7 to 2.8, the second thing I want to talk about is voice strength. Let me get there. Where'd I go? There it is, voice strength. So if you look on 2.7, or I'm sorry, 2.8, I apologize. Voice strength, it says it's not only what you say, but if you'd fill in, obviously, how you say it. It's not only what you say, but how you say it. That's on 2.8. But then at the bottom of that page, it talks about 4 things to keep in mind when it comes to your voice as a leader. The first one is volume. And so maybe next to that, you put too loud, too soft. Okay. You don't have a strong enough voice, or you're a screamer. Okay. That's the first one. That's volume. The second one is speed. Any of you, if you would just throw in a Y for yes, any of you find yourself being a fast talker, that would land under speed. Any of you find yourself in some situations, yep, being a fast talker. Yep, that's a fairly common thing. One thing that I found that actually does work when it comes to being a fast talker is use your hands as braking mechanisms. If you look at your hands and slow down your hands, your voice typically will follow. You may have to do it a couple of times, but it'll follow. Okay. So volume was first one, speed was the second one. The third one is inflection. And all I mean by that is you just kind of punch your words. And there's nothing wrong with that. So in other words, Corey might say, you understand that's due by Friday, don't you? And a lot of times you follow inflection with, you may not as you say the word. Okay. Too much of anything's too much. But just another thing when it comes to voice strength. So you have volume, you got speed, you got inflection. And then the last one is watch out for crutch words. What are crutch words? Anybody know what crutch words are? What do I mean by that? Perfect, Evan. Yep. Excuse me. That's exactly right. So it's like Roberta's got, they're filler words. Like, and then I start hearing myself say, what else? Light, some Evan headlight. They're words that we use. What I find is folks use those words either if they're nervous, if they don't feel like they're fully prepared. I do a lot of presentation skills. I've got a group right now, they're getting ready for a conference and they're doing a ton of practice, and several of them use a lot of filler words. The best way that I've found to manage that a little bit more is to be conscious, but B, to just be a little more prepared, have a little more, maybe if you need to, an outline in front of you, those sorts of things. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor, 2-8. And when you look at those 4 at the bottom, put a star next to the one that you do the best. And maybe circle one you got to work on. So in other words, if you star volume, my volume's pretty solid. The one you circle, wow, I use a lot of crutch words. Star and circle. Just give you a minute to do that. So question for you. If it's volume, if you're too loud, how do you manage that one? And I'm not saying if you've got if you're in a loud building, for example, you've got to do what you've got to do there. But if you're someone that, you're kind of a yeller, what do you do? Any wisdom there?
This is Gerard again. I guess remove the emotion and just speak with facts.
Yes, I think it's a great idea. You may have to take a lap. You may have to take a lap. I mentioned it before. I had a boss that he just had a temper. Oh my goodness. I mean, he just would, and he told us, he said, if you haven't figured it out by now, I get pre-med. And he would walk the parking lot. He would literally walk out of the building. He would take a lap and then he would come in. He would come in and talk to folks. It was just a way for him to calm down. if you're, let me give you a couple of other ideas you may want to put on the bottom of 2.8. If you're standing, sit down. I don't know what it is, but if I'm sorry, Evan, if I'm standing and Evan and I are getting a little bit upset, I may, if we find a place to go and we sit down, we just tend to go in some cases. If you can do that, I don't know if you can, but if you can, that can be helpful. So I was doing this class live and all these leaders are coming in, and I was asking everybody that came in, I said, so how many folks report to you? And this lady comes in and she goes, I have 100 folks. And I said, 100 folks? And she said, yeah. She said, well, I have 50 and my peer has 50, but we cross lead. And I said, where do you work? And she said, I run a call center. So they had people that were calling in, basically yelling at them all day long. It was for mortgages, people were late on their payments, tax bills, stuff like that. And she was just getting screamed at. So we're going through, I said, that sounds so rough. And so halfway through the class, I asked her a question and I couldn't hear her answer. And I said, you're all right? And she said, yeah, I do that all day. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, I slow down and I calm down. She said, I slow down my voice and I lower my volume. She said, I do it all day long. She said, sometimes I have to do it multiple times to help other people to calm down. But I have found that when I slow down, inevitably others will slow down. And I said, so you do that for folks on the phone, clients? And she said, I do it for folks that report to me, because she said they come to me with tough calls and they're upset and I'm trying to calm them down so they can help the clients. And I thought, something to think about, right? So calm down, slow down, sit down, just some things to think about. That's 2-8. Okay. So talked about words, talked about voice strength. If you would go to 2.9. So 2.9, it says physical presence. Above physical presence on 2.9, I'm going to have you write this: nonverbals. Okay. That's what we're really talking about on 2.9. So let me, at the bottom of the page, it gives you some thoughts around nonverbals. So let me give you some ideas, things to focus on. Under facial expressions, let's put eye contact. I'm going to go eye contact, nodding and smiling. How about that? So under facial expressions, write eye contact, nodding and smiling. Eye contact doesn't mean you have to bore a hole through their soul, but you've got to look away. It's important. Eye contact, nodding. When I nod, other people nod as well. And so that's a big one. And what was the other one? Smiling. Okay. I'm just giving you some thoughts. So that's facial expressions. The next one down is gestures. What do you think? Can you use your hands? Can you talk with your hands? What do you think? Jennifer says yes. Anybody else? I think it never hurts to use your hands. It's just how you use your hands. I mean, if you're flapping like a bird, that's problematic, right? But if I'm sitting at a table, obviously you can see me. Hey, listen, 3 things I want, Anne-Marie, 3 things I want to talk about today. I want to talk about this, I want to talk about this. I can use my hands this way to show. We just don't want to overdo it. But I think by the same token, if I'm doing this, I've got my hands under the table. So being conscious of that. Okay, that's gestures. Posture. Why do you think posture made the list? Why do you think, and when I say posture, it's how I stand, it's how I sit, right? Why do you think posture made the list when it comes to nonverbal? What do you think? And you can throw it in chat, come off mute. Why do you think posture made the list?
This is Roberta.
Hey, Roberta.
It shows you're engaged. If you lean
It
forward,
does.
it shows that you're engaged. If you lean backward, there's some type of, disconnect there.
Yes, yes. Brittany's got that as well. Shows how engaged you can be. Kyle displays confidence. So I don't want to be slouching. When you walk in at work, your folks are looking. They're looking at you. If you walk in and you're confident and you're talking to people and you're engaging, things are going to go well. But if you look like you would rather be pretty much anywhere, that kind of sets a note as well. So being focused on showing confidence, looking, standing upright, sitting, like you're comfortable and engaged. Huge posture. Distance. Why do you think distance made the list? Distance. Why do you think distance made the list? Any of you ever been around a close talk? Oh, that's it, Evan. Being too close is aggressive, personal space, giving people room to feel comfortable, giving people space, giving people room. By the same token, I've said this too. I use that sometimes if I have folks that interrupt a lot. I will sometimes, if I'm talking to Joe or Margaret hypothetically, and it's time for that conversation to end. They need to get back to work. I need to get back to work. I may take a step away from them and say something like, "Hey, listen, I don't want to take up too much more of your time here." And that's it's almost like an unconscious way of saying, we need to go. Okay. So absolutely distance. Appearance. The only thing I'm really going to go with appearance is, I do love it when, folks have on, the logo shirts from their company, those sorts of things. And then of course, stride to me is confidence. It's confidence. So that's kind of high level. The picture with this person with the very nice looking navy suit. What do you think? Crossed arms, bad, good, doesn't matter. What do you think? Crossed arms, okay, good, bad. What do you think? It can come across as closed off. The thing I would say by the same, I've had folks say this though, this is what I do when I'm cold. So it doesn't particularly mean it, but you want to definitely be conscious of it. Definitely be conscious of it. It just kind of depends on the situation. Second question. I'm obviously sitting at a table. Well, you can't tell that because I've got the AIM thing behind it, but I'm actually sitting at a table. So let's imagine that Joe or Margaret, two hypothetical folks, I'm having a conversation, and Joe or Margaret's not very happy with me for whatever reason. Should I have a table between us? Or should we be on the same side of the table? What do you think? Should we be on the same side of the table or on either two sides of the table? What do you think? What's your take there? Just love to get your take. Okay, Jennifer, good answer. Table at the same eye level. I don't want to be taller or I don't think there's Anne Marie saying opposite sides. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a table between, but to Jennifer's point, we just don't want to particularly be higher or lower, right? Good, good, good. Questions about nonverbals beyond what I've kind of shared and we talked a little bit about on 2.9 What do you think? What am I missing? What am I missing? Okay, no, it's totally cool. All right, so that's 2.9. If you would, go to 2.10. Go to 2.10. On 2.10, it starts talking a little bit about listening. I'm going to go at the top, it's case study. At the bottom, it says traits of a good listener. I'm going to go silent for a minute again. I want you to think about folks that you work with, boss, peer, and they're great listeners. What are some characteristics of a great listener? What would you say are some characteristics of a great listener? I'm going to go silent for a few minutes and then we'll come back. Alrighty, so 2.10, characteristics of a great listener, bottom of 2.10. What jumps out at you? What were some things you jotted down? What makes for a great listener? If you want to put it in the chat function, come off mute. What are some characteristics of a great listener? Okay, good. Engaged is a great one. A couple of engaged. Open, welcoming. Okay. Ask questions. Wow, you got a lot of good stuff. I'm going to let you get some of these out here, and then we're going to kind of walk through, and I'm going to have you jot down a few of these. A lot of eye contact. Shows appreciation for what they are hearing, even if it's not great news. Recap. Okay. So let's a lot of great stuff here. I'm going to have you jot a few of these down. Being engaged, so you're present, showing that you care. Remaining calm is a good one. Asking questions. As you go through asking questions, follow-up questions that really matter. Providing feedback as it relates to what they're saying. Good eye contact. Talked about questions, reactive and responsive. What else do we have? Shows appreciation for what they're hearing. Good. Make sure you get down recap. So let me make sure I understand. So what you said was this. Is that correct? Good. Avoiding interrupting, waiting. Okay. That kind of ties into being patient. No judgment for what they're saying. Okay. Wow, a lot of good stuff. So I'm trying to kind of summarize through that. So I'm typing in kind of a summary of what you had. I saw engaging, not interrupting, asking questions, eye contact, accepting the message, open, nonverbals is a good one. I'm just kind of summarizing what you said. I think summarizing what they said. I'm a huge fan of that. That's some that you said. Is it okay as you're listening to take notes? Is that okay or not? What do you think? What do you think? Brittany says yes. Good. Yeah. You know, one thing I will from time to time do is I'll say, so Anne Marie, is it okay do you mind if I take notes? Is that okay? But if I don't, there's just no way I'm going to hold on to the info, right? So you may want to add that to the bottom of 210, taking notes. Good stuff. So just wanted to give you that bottom of 210. I'm going to go past 211, go to 2-12. On the top of 212, it should say, how do you listen? Correct? Is that correct? Can somebody confirm for me? How well do you listen top of 212? Good, good, good. I'm going to ask you to do this on your own. Would you take this quiz for me, top of 212, 10 statements, 10 statements, top of on 212, give you a few minutes, and then we'll come back. Thanks, everybody. Bringing you back. We're pretty close to the end of our time, but I want to finish with this. So on 212, and then we'll stop there. I'll actually have you put a sticky or something at 212. I'm going to ask you to look down those 10 statements, and in the chat function, if there was one of those that you say, wow, I've really got to watch that. I'm just asking you to put the number of the question that you kind of struggle with, one that you've really got to focus on. Any of those on 2-12 that you really got to focus on. Okay, number 9, hold your concentration well in meetings when an agenda does. Ooh, seen a lot of 9s, a lot of 6s, totally different communication styles. Great point. 8 and 2, 8, do you stop and give eye contact when you're really busy? Do you listen well to people who you feel are boring? Fair enough. Fair enough. I just think this is, anybody else got 9 for you? It's pretty much, it looks like 2, 6, 8, 9. Brittany, you had 1. Getting everything, making sure you get everything down. Fair enough. I just think this is a really good, what, think of it almost like maybe a blind spot when it comes to listening on 212. Okay. 2 and 6. Good. Okay. Just so I'm going to do this. Let's stop here 3 minutes before the end. And I want to be conscious of if you've got another meeting, other places you need to get to that. Next week, when we come back, we'll start by doing a quick review of what we've done so far. We'll pick up at 212, talk about that a little more and move forward. Any questions before we go? Thanks so much for all of your participation. I hope you're pulling some things out of it. Okay. All right. Well, if not, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday.